Up+Adam.
Tractor systems are offline.
We are Beyond FM.
Beyond FM.
The future of broadcasting is here.
Up+Adam with Adam Montiel. It's community content from Concentrate. It's Up+Adam with Adam Montiel.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Yes, some say life is just where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
Happy Thursday. This week going by quick, huh? Thank you for being Up+Adam. My name is Adam Montiel. So today's show is going to tap into that human element, that emotional intelligence. What happens when you take someone who's lived the pain, walked through the fire, and then chooses to light the way for others? Well, that's the story of Jatzibe Sandoval. As the Community Impact and Volunteer Director at Lumina Alliance, Jatzibe isn't just coordinating volunteers, she's rewriting what advocacy looks like with her team from the inside out. With a past that's as raw as it is redemptive and a present built on fierce compassion, fearless accountability, she's helping survivors find power in their own stories, often before they even know they're ready to tell them. Later on in the show, we're going to dive into what real allyship looks like beyond the bumper stickers, the rainbow filters on the flags for a month, the invisible weight survivors really carry every day, and how trauma-informed care, trauma-informed policing is evolving faster than most systems can even keep up. She'll talk about how building trust between survivors and law enforcement and really sharing that advice that changed her life and might just change yours. Stick around. This conversation is going to move you. Lumina Alliance, focusing on Jatzibe Sandoval, who is the Community Impact and Volunteer Director at Lumina. Going to be a great chat. All right, I saw this article in the Wall Street Journal, and man, am I guilty of this. The AirPod era. While we're all just walking around with our AirPods in, like it's no big deal. I'm so guilty of this. Oftentimes, there's nothing even going on in the AirPods, and I just forget that they're there. It's not I'm trying to ignore, but this story gets into people who wear the AirPods with nothing going on just because they don't want to be bothered by people. Remember when wearing headphones in public, it meant you were antisocial. It might have even meant you were rude. But those days, well, they seem gone because we're living in this age of the AirPod. We're popping in those little white buds. Isn't just normal. It's almost expected, from checkouts to check-ins, elevators to weddings. Yeah, weddings. That's part of this article too. People are rolling deep with their audio on demand. According to the Wall Street Journal, it's not just about tunes anymore. There's something about carving out personal space in public. Wanting to avoid small talk? Boom, in goes the bud. Need to look busy while waiting in line? Boom, tap to play, let's go. It's the mix of digital armor and like social filter that's helped AirPods and their Bluetooth cousins become a modern day security blanket for some. One woman admitted that she wore hers walking down the aisle in her own wedding just to stay calm. That's a problem, right? That's definitely a problem. Others confess they wear them with nothing playing just to dodge out of conversations. Etiquette experts are torn. Is this a sign of boundaries or are we becoming socially numb? Because it goes deeper than convenience. The rise of hybrid work and remote meetings means our ears are now prime real estate, always ready to jump into a Zoom, a quick call, 10-minute meditation between errands. The AirPod is no longer just an accessory. It's a lifeline for a lot of folks. The productivity, calm, control. It lets you curate your moment on your terms. That's power, huh? Whether it's drowning out chaos or dialing into focus, being plugged in, bunny ears, plugged in is how we unplug from everything else. Isn't that weird? But let's be honest, we've all done it. We've probably all done the fake AirPod move to avoid that one neighbor or someone in line. You know, no shame, I guess, but this article, I got to put a link in the show notes. It's from the Wall Street Journal. It is an interesting piece about the AirPod era. Something I am definitely at least kind of guilty of. All right. Before we jump into our chat with Jatzibe, I got some new friends to tell you about. You know I love a good local story, and this one's got heart, hustle, and best of all, healing. Life Elements. based right here in SoCal, is a woman and minority-owned company making small batch bath, body, and wellness products that are, straight up alchemy, in my opinion. Their CBD relief sticks, legendary. Ask my dad, who now swears by them, has for the last year. Their EcoSmart deodorants, absolute game changers. And now they're officially riding with us as part of the Up+Adam family. Of course, hit up lifeelements.com. Check out all the great stuff they got going. I use their products every day, have for years. So it's so heartwarming to have them part of the show. But let me encourage you to swing by their spot in person. El Camino Real in Atascadero, 7425 El Camino, Suite O. It's back in the right corner of the plaza. You can't miss it. This is really local love at its best. And I truly believe happy food, I've said this before, happy food comes from happy kitchens. Happy wine comes from a happy cellar. Shoot, happy eggs come from happy chickens. So I truly believe these products work. Yes, the science, of course, but it's because these are good people. Support local, feel better, and yeah, tell them you heard them on Up+Adam. Link in the show notes to our friends at Life Elements.
It's Up+Adam with Adam Montiel.
All right, today we're honored to welcome someone whose work is equal parts heart and hustle. Jatzibe Sandoval is the Community Impact and Volunteer Director at Lumina Alliance. We work with them, we have all year. A Central Coast powerhouse that supports survivors of sexual and intimate partner violence. Her role goes, though, far beyond spreadsheets and signups. She trains, empowers, and leads a volunteer force that meets people at their most vulnerable and helps them reclaim a strength that's desperately needed. From collaborating with law enforcement to reshaping policies from within, she's the connective tissue between systems, survivors, and the community. And if you think advocacy is just a job, wait until you hear how Jatzibe turned her own story into a calling. It's a great chat. Please welcome Jatzibe Sandoval, Up+Adam. Jatzibe.
There you go.
Thank you for being Up+Adam.
Yeah.
It's really nice to see you here. Tell me exactly what you do at Lumina, because the Community Impact and Volunteer Director, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, let's talk about this, because this is obviously Lumina, very worthy work, the stuff that they do. Obviously, you reminded me that we sat together at Lumina, at the Lumina Nights. A fact I did not remember because that I'm just so like
you were in game mode. I totally understand that. You were in a totally different headspace.
What an amazing event though, right?
Oh, fantastic. So absolutely incredible to see the community come together for that.
Yeah. Did you go to just the night you went up there, or did you go to all 3 nights, or what?
No, I just went for that one night.
Yeah, because you were honored. You were one of the Hero Awards.
Yes, I did.
What was that like?
That was really incredible. You know, the type of work that I got into is oftentimes seen as a thankless job. And I'm okay with that. I love what I do. And to be just having a night where I'm honored, it felt so incredible. I didn't realize how impactful that was. And
yeah, you really have a heart to serve. And you could tell, because a lot of people at Lumina, they have that heart to serve.
Oh, for sure.
You know, and you look at Lumina is one of those organizations where there's almost like a little bit of like intangible magic that must happen somewhere in the process, because like you take someone who, you know, she was in one of your videos the year prior, a dear friend of mine, and she is, by all accounts, a community leader. Mm-hmm. And I even know her very personally and had no clue to which the pain that she was enduring. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, oh my gosh. And this is by all accounts a strong woman. Yeah. And so you really see the kind of people that this affects. And it's everyone. It can be everyone. It could be anyone.
Truly. And really, it shows a lot for a survivor to let you into their world and to share that. Like, that is such a big thing, because oftentimes that's what survivors don't want to do. They don't want to share it. There's a lot of shame associated with it, of how could this strong person end up in a situation where they're getting harmed. Right. Yeah. It's so, you know, I challenge everyone to really rethink that. The idea that, you know, this happens to other people, right? This happens to people we know. Most likely, you know somebody in your life who's been affected by this. Yeah, that's so true. You know, you manage volunteers, people who sign up to help others through their darkest hours, right? That takes a real special kind of person. I'm curious what's something surprising maybe you've learned about the people who choose to show up for others. Oh, that's a great question. I would say one of the most surprising things I wouldn't even say it's surprising, but one of the things I do like to highlight is the fact that it really does take that special person. And at the end of the day, a lot of the folks who volunteer with us, they're folks who are very much dedicated to this, who have somebody in their life who's been affected by this, or they themselves have been affected by this. And I often say the folks who have that lived experience make some of the most incredible advocates.
Yeah, I can imagine. What a blessing for someone who has been a victim of that to step up and serve that way, right? So let's talk the duality of kind of belonging. I mean, you know what it's like to be inside the system and outside it, to be a part of the law enforcement culture and familiar with how it works, and also part of a community that's often, even sometimes marginalized by it. How do you reconcile all these identities, and how is that duality kind of shaped how you advocate for other people?
That's a great question. And, when I think about that duality, right, we have the folks we have folks who are law enforcement, we have survivors, and then we have the service providers. The only way that we're able to actually streamline and really work for the survivors if we're all working together. Yeah. So having that common ground has been such an incredible it's been an incredible talking point that has been able to get us to a point where we're actually working together. It really is like working together not only is the benefit for the survivor, but also it benefits each other.
Yeah.
Right? Like if we have a great relationship with law enforcement, then they have more ability to want to connect with us, to want to talk with us, to check in with us. Is this best practice? Could I have done this better? So really, the program that we have is not just telling law enforcement when they do something wrong, but also congratulating them when they do something right. Providing that feedback of, hey, the way that you approached that survivor last night in that interview, kudos to you. Thank you so much for being so trauma informed and to make that survivor feel so comfortable to be able to share. So it's really just like providing that feedback, having that open communication. But, it is sometimes like a culture clash, but having that common ground really helps us bring us back into why we're there.
Yeah, I know. I got a chance to meet Hayden in this room right here. And I mean, we talked about trauma-informed policing, and I really researched and learned more about it ahead of those 3 days for Lumina Nights, and especially seeing, Hayden get, honored among some other detectives and stuff. And this is another part of Lumina's arm of assisting the community that you work heavily with, and that is this liaison with law enforcement. Yeah,
so we have a law enforcement liaison program that really helps to create that conversation with law enforcement. But what we also do is we go out to the briefings. We go to those 5:30 a.m. briefings, and we provide training to law enforcement so they know not only what best practices are, what services that we can provide, but they're also having that connection with us, right? Because it's different from a law enforcement officer having our brochure or card, and they have to call some stranger on the other end. They know that we're with Lumina, but it's so important for us to have that relationship building, that having an advocate go out there, do those briefings, they now have a point person. They now have somebody that they can call if they have any questions around providing that support.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you really meet these people where their pain is. And, some survivors, they wear it out loud, others kind of tuck it away where no one can see. How do you kind of meet someone in that invisible space, especially when they're not really ready to even maybe name what they've been through or who they've been through it with?
Yeah, we have survivors who often call us and they don't necessarily know why they're calling us. A friend either gave them the phone number or someone said, call Lumina, but they don't necessarily know why it is that they're calling us. Yeah. Once we start having those conversations, it's when we start to see those signs. We start to see the characteristics of intimate partner violence. We start to hear about how this person has forced themselves on them. And we start to really pick up those pieces. It's one thing to say, this is what you're going through and let me help you. And it's another thing to really open up the questions of, are you comfortable with that, right? Is that something that you're okay with? Tell us a little bit more about what this is, right? And then using some education around, intimate partner violence isn't just physical. So it's really a dance, right? It's a finesse with survivors of being able to make sure that they know that we can be a non-judgmental listening ear for them, while also ensuring that they have that support and that connection. Oftentimes what we get is when we have survivors calling us and saying, my friend gave me this number, or I don't really necessarily know why I'm calling. I don't want to even be on this call. we're empowering them. That's okay. You're more than welcome. Like, this is what Lumina Alliance does. If you're not comfortable with the conversation, we can disconnect the call and you can call us back whenever you're ready.
Right.
So we're giving a survivor that opportunity to be the one in charge, right?
Yes.
Putting them in the driver's seat.
You're giving them the agency, right?
Yes.
Yes. They like, and I love how you said it, putting them in charge.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's the empowerment model, right?
Yeah.
We're wanting to make sure that it's the survivor's choice, because oftentimes in these types of relationships, that's the one thing that survivors don't have is choice. They don't have choice. They don't have power, or they don't have control over their agency, right? That their ability to be autonomous. So that's what we're
in the driver's seat.
We're there in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking to a black winemaker who's a friend of mine, busy guy, brilliant talent. And we got into this conversation, this moment where he was talking about how, man, I'm booked every February for Black History Month, going to LA for this. I'm doing all this. But like, where are you at in March, April? Like, why isn't my phone ringing all year long? And I think about that a lot because we're seeing the same thing happen with June and Pride. And suddenly every corporate logo just puts a rainbow filter on it. And it's almost like a Valentine's Day at CVS. Mm-hmm. But it's not the work, right? And how do you distinguish between true allyship and just seasonal performance or virtue signaling? And how do you invite people, especially institutions, into the real messy, all year long commitment to the work that you are seeing 365?
Yeah. So typically when we see folks who are jumping on the Pride bandwagon, you know, they change their logo for 1 month, that doesn't necessarily actually support the community other than the visual, right? Other than the awareness around it. Folks are aware that the LGBTQ community is out there. What we need folks to support, queer artists. We need folks to support queer entrepreneurs, right? Like putting the money towards it as well as that awareness, right? It has to come in conjunction. It can't just be solely, I'm going to just put a rainbow sticker on this and say that I'm inclusive. Are you also looking at the forms, how people are interacting with you? Are you looking at training your staff? Is the staff on board with it? Because if they're not on board with it, you can have all the rainbows all around, but you don't have the system that's set up to actually support the queer community. Yeah. So I really do like the idea of folks educating themselves, because that's truly where allyship comes from. Is if you understand the hardships of this community, if you understand the history of this community, then you understand the importance of uplifting this community, because it's not just uplifting one community. The LGBTQ community has been historically uplifting other communities. We see the intersectionalities of other communities, and we're wanting to make sure that everyone is supported, because that's truly a human right.
You know, policies move often slow, budgets sometimes even, slower. But a survivor doesn't get to hit pause on their crisis. You know, how do you navigate the heartbreak of knowing what's needed, now, while working within systems that sometimes take a long time to catch up, and, you get bad news of money we were expecting and now we might not be. So all kinds of elements are playing roles here.
That is a very, very just a charged question. So I'm going to try to take this piece by piece. Yeah. So how do I navigate with a survivor if a policy is not set in place to really support that survivor? That's so difficult and actually a reality. So what I typically do as an advocate, right, it's my part to put in the effort to try to change that policy, to try to understand that policy. And the other part is in my position where I hold power, I am looking at so part of overseeing that volunteer and onboarding of staff is looking at the way that we train staff coming in. So in that training that we provide staff and volunteers, one of the key points, I have a slide in one of my presentations where I specifically talk about question the policies, right? It's each and every one of our responsibilities to look at a policy, to look at a structure, and to say, does this serve us? Does this uplift a community? If not, let's question it. Let's bring this to the table. So that's one of the beauties of Lumina Alliance is if we see a policy is not necessarily uplifting a community, we will evaluate, we'll take a look at it, and we'll do things to change it, to modify it so that it can. There are certain things that our hands are tied, and it's like, we really don't have that ability to change the law, but we have the ability to advocate with others who can possibly change the law. Right. So trying to find that, place where we can make those changes. That's the beauty of the work. But then you have the other side, right, where our hands are tied and it's just very difficult. And we have to have very difficult conversations.
there are people who are working frontline roles, cops, you work with them, ER staff, campus officials, right, who interact with survivors every day. And yet trauma-informed training is still sometimes seen as like this optional thing you can be a part of in so many spaces. What do you wish every frontline person who gets a chance, a responder, what do you wish they would understand about survivors that they encounter?
What I would wish they would understand is it's more of the evolution of what trauma-informed care is.
Got it.
So what we thought was trauma-informed care a year ago is definitely not trauma-informed care now.
Yeah.
Things evolve, things change, our language changes, the way that we use it changes. So what I would say is, it seems like a lot to have to train somebody and then have to retrain them again, but it's an investment you're making towards the community. It's an investment that you're making to each and every single one of those individuals to ensure that the systems that they are navigating are not only safe, but they are comfortable to navigate. Because it's already a very shameful experience having to open up and share such vulnerabilities to then be met with a system that doesn't actually support you. Like, that's what it is. We're investing in our community. We're investing in our survivors.
If there is someone listening right now who goes, there's no way I have the strength, I am not strong enough to do what these people at Lumina on the other end of a hotline or what you're doing training volunteers, what do you say to them right now?
Even if you don't have the strength yourself, you have a collective strength. You have a community strength. I myself, I can't run the line all by myself. I can't take every single call. I rely on my colleagues. I rely on my community partners. This is a community that we have to uplift one another, and we have to really give a hand to each other. So if you feel like you're at a point where you can't do it yourself, I do challenge you to take a look if you may need a break too, because compassion fatigue is a real thing. Burnout is a real thing. And oftentimes it's one of the indicators, right? Is if you feel so overwhelmed and like nothing you do is actually going to make a difference. That can be a sign that you might need to take a break.
I was just going to ask you that. It's so interesting you say that, because my next question is like, I imagine there are days of the weight of these stories, they feel unbearable to you. And what is your ritual, your release when those, you punch out and you end your day on one of those hard ones?
Such a great question. I was given this piece of advice a while ago, the idea of a media diet. So when I first started working at Lumina Alliance, this is before the merger, I was working at the domestic violence side of Stand Strong, and I was a legal advocate. During that time, my first year, I absolutely loved doing the work. I would help survivors going to court, getting restraining orders. And then afterwards, when I clocked out, I would go home and watch Law and Order SVU, which...
A great show, by the way.
Great show. But you see the issue here, right? It's my body, although I very much...
Screaming at the screen.
Yep. Although I knew that I was no longer at work, my body didn't know the difference.
Right.
So it's really been a change of lifestyle for me, of having to no longer, I watch comedies now. I watch something that's lighthearted. When I listen to music, I do like listening to heavy metal every now and then, but like...
I wouldn't have pegged you as heavy metal, really.
Oh, for sure. But like I try to listen to things that may not necessarily have that same violence overtone. So I very much am very cautious of what I allow into my body, because that's what ultimately affects me. I started noticing that I was really tired. I was really tired. I didn't know why. I just, after I clocked out of work, I'd go home, watch my thing, go to sleep, come back to work. And I did not know what was happening. I heard somebody mention this once, and I said, you know what? It's worth a shot. And honestly, that is the best piece of advice that I've been given around longevity, because it's true.
What did you do? You were tired? You did what?
I stopped watching Law & Order SVU.
So literally, you're making that connection, right? So you stopped watching those things that, my mom always said, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
You plant rose seeds, you get rose bushes. You plant weeds, So what you reap is what you sow. And if you feed a lot of this negative stuff, it's, I totally know what you mean.
Even when you hear folks that are talking about current events, I just I'm constantly hearing the news. I'm seeing the news. It's on my phone. It's on the car.
I struggle with that.
Yes, I want to stay informed, but I also need to limit it, because if I don't limit it, best believe I'm going to be watching and listening to the news 24/7, and that's not going to help anyone.
No, I know.
So just those simple things of, maybe not listening to it on the car ride home, maybe only watching the news at this certain point of my day, but not having it on 24/7.
Yeah, that cycle. So I always say advocacy isn't a job. It's really a calling. It's almost like hospitality or some of these other pieces where your heart is leading, right? And advocacy is one of those things. Do you remember the moment where you felt like you were called into this work?
I do remember that moment. Oh, gosh. Okay. So it's a series of moments, to be honest. The first moment started when I was, oh God, I don't remember the year. I want to say 2000. I saw this the other day. 2013. I had been justice impacted. What I mean by that is I unfortunately was going through a lot in my own life, and I ended up, so I'm a recovering addict, and I got to a point in my addiction where I ended up getting arrested. I ended up having to go to court, and it was a lot. Yeah. It was a lot to have to go through that entire process. And to be honest, I didn't really understand what was happening around me. And it wasn't until the third time that I got arrested, the judge told me, we saw each other the week before, and he told me, okay, I'm going to give you one last shot, just one more. And I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to just go forward, and I'm going to try to do my best. I'm going to go to my sobriety program. I'm going to try not to get arrested anymore. I'm just going to be a law-abiding citizen.
Yeah.
And in that moment of being by myself, just being, getting the finger wagged by a judge, right? In that moment, I realized I need to step up for myself. But I also had this other moment of, I wish there was somebody here with me.
Yeah.
I wish I had a support person. And from that moment on, I wanted to be that support.
Wow.
I wanted to be
in my corner. Keep me accountable.
Yeah.
Encourage me. Yeah. Love me.
Also, what is this person saying?
Right.
Because in very
Translate
traumatic,
for me.
Yeah, in a lot of traumatic experiences, we often say that our memory, right? Our memory goes, our ability to comprehend sometimes isn't there. Mm-hmm. And so part of being an advocate is also being that second pair of ears, being that second pair of memory for a survivor, because sometimes in those trauma moments, you're not remembering things.
No.
So to be able to say, hey, this is what was discussed, right? Here's the summary, right? Even just the simple thing of here are the notes from today's appointment.
Helpful.
So helpful.
Yeah.
And I wish I had that for myself. So that was one piece of it. The other side of it was once I got sober, once I finished all my court requirements, I found myself being a counselor for batterers intervention. So for those that don't know, batterers intervention is the other side of the work of intimate partner violence, where the person who has caused the harm is now mandated by the court to go to a program to help combat those types of violent tendencies, right? It's really a mixture of talk therapy. It's a group setting, 52 weeks or 26 weeks, depending on which one you get. And I was one of the facilitators for this in Santa Barbara County. And I found myself really struggling to support the guys, because oftentimes what I was hearing from the guys is they are victims too. They are survivors as well. And yet they're the ones that are sitting here today. They're the ones that are in this seat. And there's a mixture of things there. And I think part of it helped me realize that it's not always what it appears, as well as anyone can be a survivor. So being able to support the guys in those groups and being able to help them with navigating probation, navigating the systems also, I found myself doing the work that I now do today. And it's really in those interactions that I realized this is what I want to do. I want to help folks understand what's going on, as well as help folks be that support for them. And also, speak truth to systems that oftentimes aren't necessarily supportive.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a combination of those things. I
love that you shared that with me, Jatzibe. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. It really gives me that window into why you have a heart for this. Lumina Alliance, they do such worthy work. How can people learn more about them? What should people know of late? Let's say someone's listening, goes, I want to volunteer. I want to be on the other end of that 24-hour hotline. I want to volunteer here or do this, or my business can get involved and we can donate. Or how can people learn more about you and more about, of course, Lumina Alliance?
Yeah. So One way that is just a great place to check out is luminaalliance.org, our website. That has a plethora of information, anywhere from how to become a volunteer to how to support somebody who's experiencing intimate partner violence or sexual assault. One of the things that I do want to highlight is the fact that we don't just serve survivors, we also serve the loved ones, the family members, because we recognize that this affects everybody.
Right.
So if you are wanting to be a part of this coalition, if you are wanting to be a part of this movement, reach out, educate yourself, connect with us. We can provide trainings, we can provide presentations. We can also, if needed, we would be more than happy to have conversations with loved ones to help you understand how to best support somebody who's experiencing it. Because sometimes what we think is the best idea may not necessarily be the best idea. Sometimes it sounds counterproductive, the advice or the guidance that we provide.
Yeah.
So, I highly recommend giving us a call, because our line is not just a crisis line, it's an information line. So our number is 805-545-8888. Again, 805-545-8888.
I'll make sure I put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
As well as the website, everything about Lumina Alliance. Well, I've really loved getting a chance to know you in your story a lot more, Jatzibe.
Yeah, thank you.
This was fun.
This was fun.
Yeah, luminaalliance.org, and we will chat once again. I love the work that you guys do, and I love working with you throughout the year. So look forward to seeing you again and just any of the team member of Lumen again. Thanks for being Up and Adam.
Of course.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
Oh, a huge thank you to Jatzibe for joining us today, giving us a real raw look into the world of advocacy, healing, systemic change. To learn more about Lumina Alliance, how to support their worthy mission, even become a volunteer yourself, head over to luminaalliance.org. Of course, link in the show notes. All right, gearing up for Saturday, July 12th. Why is that? Because Pink Drank is here. Bring your thirst, leave your excuses, because this summer we pour pink. Saturday, July 12th, Elks Lodge, baby. San Luis Obispo, over 30 of the hottest producers in wine, beer, cider, spirits, craft cocktails, all poolside, all dressed in pink, curated bites, a live DJ, and vibes you cannot fake. And I tell you, this is not your average tasting. This is summer served sexy. And it all supports the Woods Humane Society, also the Elks National Foundation, so you can party with purpose. For the 21 and over, tickets $65. Come on now. You will not leave thirsty or hungry. I guarantee you that. Grab your tickets now. Pink Drank, DRANK, pinkdrank.org. All right, was texting Dan Curcio of Moonshiner Collective yesterday. He is super stoked, excited. The very first concerts at the Plaza, downtown Slow. I can't wait. Gonna be there. Moonshiner Collective. Thank you to Moonshiner Collective for original music on this show called Start Again. Moonshinercollective.com. Follow them online and listen wherever you get your music. Also, thanks to our friends at Timbre Winery for the LoBro Studios at Timbre. You can taste their wines in Arroyo Grande. That's where their tasting room is. In the Village, don't miss it. World-class wines, great people. Love their stuff. Timbre Winery, Timbre, TimbreWinery.com. And may I take a moment and thank you for connecting here, rating, reviewing, subscribing, wherever you listen to the show. It really does mean a lot. Anytime you just copy this link, share the podcast app that you're listening on to a friend, tell you, it moves the needle. So thank you in advance. Appreciate you more than you know. Till tomorrow, when it will be Friday. Let's go. I'm ready. I'm Adam Montiel. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you for being Up and Adam.